So that's how the policy of the town was stated last night.
If you're running a Fortune 500 company, you could have guys all over the planet. If you're there, you're there.
Right.
So.
Okay, without further ado, sorry, I guess I missed our start point. I'd like to welcome everybody to the December Christmas meeting of the Harwich Golf Committee. And I'm extremely thankful that Sean was able to step in for Roman tonight. And again, it must have been fate, if you will, because much of the agenda, Sean, as far as the meat of the matter is concerned, we want to talk about your maintenance reskin and the potential, you know, that resides there.
Yeah.
So I guess the first order of business, I sent out that, thanks to Mike Sargent, his work this year has been outstanding. I really appreciate it. So I'd entertain a motion to adopt the November minutes as he posted.
So moved.
So moved and seconded by Martha Duffy. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So, Sean, because you're here, I'm not going to forget. I usually blow right by the director's report and have to apologize. So, if you would, please.
So, in the director's report, as you guys can all see,
Yeah.
and Roman's, most of his stuff is on basically what we've been doing and kind of what's been
Yeah.
going on. Golf carts obviously showed up, as everyone's been saying. I think you guys, from the standpoint of the maintenance side and the pro shop side, we're just as ecstatic as you guys are about the next phase for Cranberry Valley. The carts are really going to put the icing on the cake. When it's gonna change the game when you get in it and you actually drive down that fairway, and there's no noise. It moves towards
Aesthetically.
it helps us going green. So it checks so many boxes from our standpoint that it's well worth the time. I mean, we always say this. Clem said, Cranberry Valley, we do it once, but we do it right because it takes a little time to get there. But when we do get there, we do it right. So at least we can say that. So carts, first thing, they're putting them together. They should be done tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, and then we'll start, my crew will go in and we'll start hanging all of the chargers and lining them up with the carts, plugging them in, getting everything lined up. So everything should be, no problems come spring.
As a footnote, I had the luxury of getting up there early this morning, and I met the big semi that was delivering the last of the carts. And I think it's important to note, because of our contractual relationship, what a professional team of experts putting these carts together. They're like an Army Corps of Engineers. There were 8 or 9 guys. They came in and, I mean, in 5 minutes, I think they had assembled about 10 carts. I couldn't believe it. It was, you know.
It's nice when you get people doing it the way
Yeah,
it's supposed to be
yeah.
done.
It's
So
a
it makes life a little easier
Credit
for
to
us.
Alex Stimpson, who's our vendor, sales manager. He helped to put that together. And just as an additional footnote, I sent John Wheeler a little picture.
Oh, nice.
Because he had, input, and I'm sure, I didn't hear back from him. He's probably on the road or something, so.
So just to give
Sean?
you a little bit, obviously GPS units. Well, I was talking to Alex today. Actually, the white line may be able to go away because if you take a cart, I automatically tell it every morning how far it needs to be, so we can save some more money
How
and not
good
have
is
to
that?
put out paint to keep people out where they're supposed to go. It'll give you a warning. It's really going to make a difference in how
It's
we
gonna
do
be
business.
interesting for some of the people with what about the handicap?
Yeah, we can actually go in on the handicap, identify the carts that are going out right then and there. So then that cart has what we call, what we do is we just put the cart number in and it gives it the track for handicap carts. So if a cart goes within certain amount of
Park
feet,
right next to the green?
yes, it will stop it from doing that because it won't go. It says you have 5 seconds to get your butt back. So things like that, we can identify where we need to. It's a little bit of legwork in the beginning, but pin placements, you'll see pin placements on the front, middle, and back. You'll see where they are on the cart if you take the cart with you. So you'll see all that stuff. It's really going to put some nice icing on that cake. So.
And you'll be able to monitor the progress of those cars
Yeah,
too?
we'll have constant, we can check in at any time, we can, if I have an area on 10, like, cut path only, I can highlight the area on 10 to the right where it's always wet, and just let people know that if they go down that way, get back up on the other side, we won't have to, you wanna say Ranger will be out there, but every cart has its own Ranger in it.
That's great.
So.
And you'll be able to send messages to the car.
To the cart, right from the pro shop.
It's ideal. And another adjunct too, folks, I think, is in the case of a medical emergency as well, and just, it's that much more enhanced communication with, the people that are out there.
Mhm.
So,
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Instead of them calling in and saying, no one's
Right,
picking up the phone,
right.
because we're too busy. So the next thing is the Stump Grinder. You guys knew that we went into a three-way deal with both highway and cemetery. We purchased it sometime over the summer. I think by the time we got done, it was probably mid-June or end of June that we actually took physical ownership of it. Highways had it, and they've been using it. I asked to have it for the month of December, so we've been out stump grinding on the golf course. We probably have at least 2 more days out there, and we've done close to, probably in the end, probably 75 to 100 stumps. So, and and I said to everyone, I said, we'll go this season. We'll go out and we'll start marking now. This is what we saw just real quick. And then when we got it, we hadn't gone out and marked anything or done any of that. Next year, we take down a tree, we'll mark it, so that we just grab the stump grinder, go out and grind it. So it's really going to pay dividends. Now let me tell you, those 100 stumps that we ground, on average, that would have been probably close to half, probably close to $10,000, $12,000 is what it would have cost to stump grind. So the first year we paid $19,000 for our share of that. It's already paid more than half of what we put into it. So it's a good buy.
and I think, I was in conversation with Mary Kelly, that is the coordinator for the cemeteries. You may or may not remember, but in that tornadic event, they lost over 400 trees in the various cemetery properties.
Mhm.
They've been able to catch up on that. I talked to Link Hooper at Highway. It's
So-
this machine has
It's-
it's been transformational.
It's one of those things that every town needs to have one. You know what I mean? It's like I think a street sweeper.
Yeah.
You got to have one as a tool. It makes the life a little easier.
As an anecdotal too, a Rain Rider, who's one of his longest employees, I would
Mhm.
say,
Yeah, left, yeah,
one of
that's
Cranberry
still-
Valley's longest.
Of course.
He told me today that when he started at Cranberry Valley, I don't know if he shared this with you, the stump grinder you had to manually
Hmm.
move it back and forth over the stump.
You sweep it back and forth.
And he said it was just exhaustive, and you were there all day to do one stump. I mean,
It could take you all day to do that one.
this,
So.
this machine in action, it's like,
On average, 15 minutes a stump.
Wow, that's great.
just-
On average.
and the great part is, it reduces the stump profile to the point where you can
We do.
Put a sand up.
Yep. Go
put your turf materials in place,
seed and loam.
seed it, and it's gone.
Yep.
So,
Next, so basically for the winter, we're done for the season. We closed the greens on Monday, the 13th. They were verti drained. We had a company come in that we pay, comes in and verti drain, basically walks on the green, and it goes down about 8 to 10 inches. Reason we do that is for drainage. We're gonna apply snow mold chemical treatment to the greens tomorrow, and then we'll start top dressing right after that. And then they'll sit that way for the season, and Mother Nature will drop a bunch of rain, which happens to happen on Saturday. It'll wash it all in, and then we'll be ready for when we get ready to come in the spring. They should come in nice. I'll tell you, the month of December's been so warm. I don't know if anyone's been out there, but man, that golf course looks pretty good for December. How much grass we've been able to grow this off season. Usually when the course isn't that busy, we usually don't heal back a lot because it's cold. But this spring, this past fall has been a warmer fall than normal, so we've healed back a lot of turf. So we're in good shape. Last night, rates and fees. I went for Roman, and everything got approved. What Roman had suggested and you guys had come up with as far as to the selectmen. They only had a couple of questions, basically how many members we had, and they wanted to see the breakout. So Roman was going to forward that information on to the town administrator. Other than that, the only other question was the difference between what our outside members pay and what some of the other towns pay.
Yeah.
And the question, I answered the question to say that they have 2 golf courses, we only have 1. So it's kind of hard to go up and when we don't have much more tee times to offer. So,
And we still have 1 more year
to
of
catch up.
escalation to
Yep.
make all non-residents
Next
Right,
year's,
same.
yep,
Same,
next
right.
year's rates
Yeah.
you'll reach that goal.
good.
Operations staff is updating website, Chelsea, Golf Now with new rates. We'll announce on the January 10th the first tee time sales of the 22. Operations staff has been busy building tee sheets, combinate tee time sales, annual pass, gin memberships. An announcement will go out in early January. The budget, I'm pretty sure that Roman shared with you our budget message that we got from the town. We submitted that budget to the town as per the town administrator's orders, but we did send, Roman did, upon me and him meeting, send a letter to the town administrator letting him know kind of what those cuts and situation with the budget would do to us. We've had meetings, I've had a couple of department head meetings with, in which we shared our, most of the department heads in town did share their each individual situations with the town administrator, and he said that we'd all have fair share when we do have our meetings to air our grievances and our thoughts about the budget. So that was pretty much how that went.
And I think for the
But will he
record,
listen to you?
Well, you know, I'll say this. I understand the town administrator is trying to do, because in the past, our message has come from the selectmen. This message is from Joe. He's trying to build his budget, which he has to know every aspect of. So he's going to know, because he's going to fight just as much as we're going to fight for what we need. So we're going to have that discussion, and I think by doing that, he's going to know what's needed and what's not. So from his standpoint, as far as if I was putting my budget together, I need to know what's in it. So
Yeah.
this is his way of knowing what's going to be in it to the T, so then he can turn around and say, okay, well, without this, we don't do this. Without that, we don't do this. So I understand it. It's not, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
that's how we have to approach it at this point. He understands by the letter that being where we were last year and what we've been able to do in the past, it's kind of hard to take a cut of this nature, and we've expressed that to him based off of 2 years of a row of cuts. So you're basically cutting me to 3 years ago numbers. So understand, and we've expressed that, and inflation.
And that's what he's asking you to level fund to, right?
Basically, we're level funding to
Last year?
last year's numbers, which were
Just-
cut.
yeah.
Which were also cut the year before that.
Right.
So really, in theory, you're cutting me 3 times to the level that I was 3 years ago when this whole thing started, before that. So with that in mind, we've expressed to him some of the stuff that we've, as a goal, as a committee that you guys have done, and then us as, me and Roman as a management staff, about our goal to be as green as possible, start changing the program to be 100% organic. These are the things that budget's gonna need to continue that. This year alone was my push in the budget, was to get all synthetic fertilizer except for 1 app. So that means we would be close to 98%, basically, from a fertilizer standpoint, organic. So that means that's 1 cog out of the 3 cogs in the maintenance: water, pesticides, and fertilizer.
Yeah.
So if we're already there reaching with fertilizer, we're about to change the irrigation system to better manage that situation moving forward. The reduction in pesticides would be the next. So it's all attainable, but it's gonna cost us. And that's what we try to explain to him.
and from the committee perspective, if anyone has thoughts to share, I would certainly entertain that in a moment. But I want to get my 2 cents worth in this respect, and I know I'm preaching to the choir. But in my analysis of what we've done and the direction we've taken, not just golf, but the town at large deserves to have a level of services guaranteed to the taxpayers that they can anticipate or expect. We have generated the revenue to accomplish that goal. And the second thing is the fact that, as we move forward, I think it's just incumbent. The golf experience at this golf course, the way it's operated, those standards have to be maintained, or you're going to see I think, a catastrophic implosion and a reaction from the public too.
And-
I think,
Steve?
I think one of the biggest fears I have is you're going to see a drop in utilization and in turn a drop in revenue. If we don't maintain the course to the standards that we always have, which common sense would tell you, I mean, 3 years ago, we're probably up 25-30% in the number of rounds from 3 years ago.
Easily.
So if you're putting that much more burden on the course, with that many more players, to think that you can maintain the same level of conditioning for less money, let alone 25 or 30% more money, just is contrary to logic. And what we're going to do, or what my big fear is, we're going to see a drop, and we're going to drop the number of rounds that we sell, which is going to drop the revenue back below our operating expenses, and then the town's going to have to pick up the cost to make up the difference.
Exactly.
I mean, I understand, quote unquote, the theoretical political lazy, in my opinion, way to do budgeting in a big enterprise when your revenue is somewhat iffy, is just to say, okay, that's a flat budget for everybody. But the reality is, we're one of the few revenue generating functions within the town. And you need to protect that revenue generation.
I think,
Because the costs are the costs, and if you don't generate enough revenue to cover them, it's gonna have to come somewhere else. So to say that everybody needs to be treated the same, that every department needs to be level funded because it's the only fair way, is just political bull. It's just not taking the time to say, if we don't give the full budget request, the original budget request that Roman put in, what we should be doing is making some sort of analysis and speculation that we may see an X% drop in the number of rounds played and or the number of members that we continue to have, which is gonna cost us 200 grand. So, you cut our budget from Roman's request by the 60 grand that he asked for. If it costs you 200 grand, you just cost the town, in very tight fiscal scenario, $140,000.
Right.
I mean, if you're running a big enterprise
Which
that
we
has
are.
a true business that has multiple sections, and you came in flat for the year, but one of the sections was actually profitable, you wouldn't say, I'm gonna treat that one in terms of investment the same way I am the other sections that actually lost money that drove us to an enterprise to be flat.
Right.
And it's just, we're taking the simple, easy, non-specific way around doing the budgeting. We really gotta push on that because, I don't know how Sean is doing it, your team, to be honest with you. How do you keep the conditions the same or better
Well,
when there's 30% more utilization and you have no more people or no more money
Right.
to do it? I
So-
mean, that's,
what I try to tell people, and I've been here so long that we've gone through those years. What ends up happening is, it's not year 1 or 2 that you see it. It's year 3, 4, and 5.
yes.
And what I explain to them, you can take a year off. You can say, okay, we're going to catch on. But it's when you're doing this right now and you're going back 3 years to cut to that budget, and you're going to say we want to do everything. With the inflation in the cost of goods, there's feasibly, and this is what we explained to him. This is why he said, wait till I get through the first set of meetings and let's see where we're at. Let's meet first before he goes, you're seeing just what I put on a piece of paper. That's not after we've had that conversation.
Point well taken.
And let me tell you, the other one too was FinCom. FinCom is so in our corner when we have this conversation with the town accountant. She sees I mean, it's hard not to see that number. You know what I mean?
Sean,
Paul,
do you know?
excuse me, Paul, I want to take you next, but I just want to underscore what Steve said. That's what I was searching for. Essentially, what you're saying is that in this, I've said it for years now, all departments are not created equal. we are a revenue center and generator, as well as several other departments in the town. But it begs the question, you know, therefore, where does that money go? So I appreciate that sentiment, Steve. And I want to I'll move around the room, Carol. I'm sure you have some thoughts, and John is.
I actually have some comments too. I agree with Steve, but it's not just John's physical operation, but it's our service operation as well. And as both of them are impacted, we run the risk of deterioration in both ends, and that could lead to revenue loss. And when that happens, we can create a little death spiral that recovering from it may be extremely difficult and may take years to do.
Exactly.
So it's a very serious, I think it's a very serious issue that we have on our hands.
Thank you. Paul?
Before Sean said what he just said, it was occurring to me that people's decision on using the course are going to be based on their most recent experience. So that first year, you probably skate pretty well. But when they start to see a deterioration, that's where it happens. That's where the melt happens. And this course, it isn't just for the members, it's for the whole town, and it's for what is a big piece of, allows this town to flourish, which is visitors in the summer, tourism, the chatter about what a great place to play, what a terrific municipal course. You can't beat it, and the people are friendly, and it's wonderful. So this would be a disastrous decision. So I do hope we can continue to make the case that we can't be treated the same as everybody else, that we've suffered and have managed to put things together, but you can't keep doing it.
Right.
You can't keep doing it. And the other point I want to make is, I know it's not going to be a regular source of income, but there's all kinds of money coming towards this town right now. There's infrastructure money that's going to be coming to the state, and it's going to be coming to the town. And it might relieve the burden of things that the town was going to try to do and loosen up resources. And then there's more federal money potentially in the pipeline. And for some reason, thank you God, the economy of this state is flourishing in this mess. And we have all sorts of tax resources. So we have elected officials at the state level that we can work and continue to get our fair share in this town. And with that infusion, as well as, what we bring into this town, we deserve that extra consideration.
Paul, thank you. That was
I totally
very
agree with
insightful.
that.
Martha?
I totally agree. I think that, Sean, you and your staff need to be commended. All the use that is used, how many people we have this past summer that have played golf at Cranberry, and the course has never been in such great shape. So that says it all.
Sure.
Sean, how, do you know what the difference is between a level funded and what Roman originally had?
So, well, let me put it this way. Right now, when we submitted our budget, we thought we were somewhere around, it ended up being closer to probably $55,000 to $60,000 that we had to find out of the expense side to cover the payroll side of the budget. Because most of the costs that have gone up are going to be more on the payroll side than they are on more so the.
Aren't you seeing inflation in your?
In my cost of goods, yeah. The good thing for us is we do county and state bids. So the good thing is with county and state bids, we're a year out. So we won't see that number until they rebid. So that number usually for me doesn't happen until sometime early in the spring. But we've already been told fertilizer costs are going to go up. There's no doubt. We have to understand that. But what ends up happening for us is we're going to pick the things that we know. Like for me, it's greens, tees, fairways. So if something needs to get cut or I need to wean back, rough's going to be the first. The range is going to be the second. Those are the areas where we have the most turf. 40 acres roughly of rough. So if I need to cut, I'm going to trim a fertilizer treatment in my rough before I do anything else. But again, then you start to get to that point where it does take away from the shine that's there, But again, you do what you asked by management, and you do the best you can.
Oh, yeah.
And you hope and pray. And I've said this to our new town administrator who's been here for a little bit, but prior ones, and I said to them, if you turn around and the hand that feeds you, basically, the ones that make the money, and you cut us, you're not just cutting those departments. You're not cutting just golf, because we make money for all the other departments that don't.
Yeah.
So when you cut Cranberry Valley, you're cutting our potential to make the money for the other departments. So it's a double-edged sword.
Which I think is a great
I
point.
think that's a great argument
Yeah.
right there. And I think we need to put together a very well thought out response to the town administrator. And I
Yeah,
think all the arguments that
Yeah.
everyone's just brought up.
Yeah,
Karen,
and, we've shared, and like I said, and let me tell you, my department head meetings aren't very, when they ask, okay, what's next? The first thing that comes up is, we obviously have, this is the most important aspect to us, because to each one of us in a department head, these are our own little departments that we put a lot of hard work into that we want to see succeed, which in town means the town succeeding.
To play off of what Martha said, when she asked Sean, how do you get everything done? Our business model, based on personnel needs, is about as tight as you could get, I believe. Because we've always put the question to you, Sean, are staffing levels, what you anticipate or expect to get the job done? And you always respond with, yes, they are. So we're dependent on part-time labor, et cetera. How about this for a conundrum? Because Roman shared this with me, Carol. At this level funding concept, we won't even be able to meet minimum wage standards to pay people as adjunct part-timers, which will violate
So in theory,
the law.
in
which-
theory, municipalities do not have to pay minimum wage.
Yeah.
Doesn't bode well when you pay less than Stop and Shop and those other
They're
departments.
paying,
$17
they're
an
paying
hour.
17 bucks an hour.
You're not gonna get you're not gonna get the quality people either.
Correct.
Right.
If I could,
Steve?
I think to everybody's point, and in particular Carol's, I think if we are gonna try to put together some sort of strategy in dealing with this budget situation, for lack of a better term, I believe that we shouldn't be focusing on we should stop focusing just on the expense side, because that's what the overall is doing, and that's where they're coming up with the level funding. I think instead we should be looking at pulling out the numbers from 2-3 years ago, whenever we had our last regular year, and talk about
19.
the increases that we're seeing. We need, if we're gonna maintain, if you were gonna maintain the same quality service in almost any other business, restaurant, if your utilization of your restaurant grew by 30%, you would naturally go out and hire some more wait staff. Because you're saying, I can't deal with 30% more customers
Right.
at the same level with the same amount of wait staff availability that I had when I had 30% less customers. I can't maintain a golf course in pristine condition when I have 30% more traffic. People walking on it, riding carts on it, making divots. And I think that should be our focus, is saying, the labor increase, the minimum wage increases are one thing, but simply ask, based on common logic, how do you expect us to run a business that's grown by 30% from 2 or 3 years ago at less money than we were spending then? And that just, any reasonable finance person or business person would say, no, you can't do that. If you're really growing, or we say, and if you're not going to, then we have to project a 20% decrease in revenue for the upcoming year.
Yeah.
And what's that gonna do to the overall town
Correct.
situation if the revenue drop at Cranberry Valley is $400,000
Exactly.
next year?
So,
That's gonna devastate the other departments, so we're not looking to gain advantage of them, we're looking to see to it that we don't hurt them.
I think it was such a bold move next door that I think that he understands he's understanding what he put out, and now he's going to have a meeting in which we have that conversation. Because he understands that he can look at where we're at and what we've done, and then turn around and say, well, I mean, that's just foolish to not feed that animal to make a little bit more money that can feed so much more.
I mean, one interesting factoid would be, if we look at 3 years ago as the last regular year,
Yeah.
we didn't have a tornado, we didn't have a pandemic, and all these crazy things. What was our revenue 3 years ago? And say, hey, if you're gonna fund us back to that, then we have to forecast and project the revenue down to that revenue amount from 3 years ago. What's that gonna do to the town? If instead you give us some more money, we can project flat revenue to this past year, which was wonderful.
Exactly.
And isn't that gonna help everybody in the town if we can do that?
John, I've given you enough time to summarize.
I agree with everything that's been said so far. And I think the important thing is we have to find out when this reckoning with the town administrator and the board of selectmen is going to take place in terms of what they're finally going to do with the budgets.
Agreed.
And
First 2 weeks of
Carol's
January.
point before, I think we have to be ready with a presentation saying what the impact, or the worst case scenario, what the impact would be for us in terms of revenue as well as running our operation. And I think that's really the key.
Yeah.
And I think we have to be very proactive in that regard because we know what can happen.
Exactly.
And, you know what they're trying to do. They're going to try to cut us to the nth degree in terms of what our budget's going to be. So I think we have to be very proactive in that regard.
And
Yeah, and I think we also, the key that everyone seems to be touching upon is the risk of revenue loss. And that, if we can't illustrate that, I think that is really going to hit home.
And I
Exactly.
think the other thing is too, I think we said when we put our first budget in, it was anywhere, I think Sean said 50 to 60. I think Roman had even said it was close to 100.
It was closer to 100. It was closer to 100, John.
Yeah, I thought it was
Yeah.
6,
So I think when you're talking $100,000, that's a lot of money. And with the crisis that we're going through today's economy with inflation and so forth, you certainly can't buy a lot looking into the next year, the same budget that we had. So there's going to be some impact on our operation, there's no doubt about it. And I just think that we have to be proactive rather than worrying about this, and then trying to solve the problem next year when this budget goes through. So I don't know what the timeline is for that budget approval.
Well,
Budget meetings, we're told, is gonna start right after the holidays, first 2 weeks of January.
and John, usually there are the budget meetings, and then Sean, correct me if you will, but then we go into the cycle, because I've been there for the meetings. We go to FinCom,
Yeah.
and there's a joint review, and usually it's Sean and Roman, and I'm just window dressing in the background, but I've attended those meetings, and that's the final resolution.
After that, then you'll
Yeah.
get basically a conversation. And so basically, from the middle of January, we'll have our first meeting with the town administrator. We get our chance to air out our grievances. And then what usually happens is he starts putting his numbers together. We meet with FinCom. We have that same conversation that we had with the selectmen with FinCom. We tell them, they come up with their number. And then basically we have that one meeting where we sit down and we basically hash out any other final questions. And then that budget at that point the town administrator will then present his budget to the selectmen.
Carol, I guess I would humbly suggest, as far as our group's concerned, that we time our action, and I don't want to characterize it as a reaction, but our action, perhaps in that February
Yeah, I believe.
time period.
I believe by the middle of January, probably no later than sometime around the end of, after Martin Luther King weekend, I think we'll probably have our first sit down with the town administrator and the town
Yeah.
accountant,
Yeah.
finance. And which,
So what can we do as a committee or individuals within the committee to help prepare,
so,
best
Yeah.
prepare Roman and Sean and
Yeah.
whoever else may be attending that mid-January meeting?
Well, I would suggest that you wait until we see what happens out of that meeting.
Yeah.
Because like I said to you, I think that's when the rubber's gonna meet the road. At that point, if we're not feeling too happogenic after we get out of that meeting, then you need to rally those carts and start making some phone calls. Because then at that point is, okay, if the selectmen are thinking that way, FinCam can't be far, far behind.
I think we need to do it before. I think we
I
should
think the
have
big thing,
a
I
presentation.
think the big thing that we have to really focus on is, number one, the level funded budget, what impact is that gonna have on the line items that we have in our costs, such as, buying fertilizer or buying equipment or whatever the case may be. On top of that, what impact is it gonna have on the seasonal wage earner that we have working at Cranberry Valley? And what kind of impact that's gonna have on headcount for the summer months when we really need it? And, the
We
thing that kind of,
already have that.
caught my attention was that 73% of the budget in the town is labor. So I assume that with level funded budgets, does that mean that nobody in the town is gonna get a raise next year?
No, at the present rate, the selectmen have settled with, I think, 4 or 5 of the unions still left to, they're still in negotiation. So 4 out of the, 4 have settled, I think there's 4 more left to go. So again,
So
those
there,
numbers,
so there are 8?
there's 8 unions in the town.
The part-time people though aren't covered by.
Are not
union,
covered
right?
by, nope, they're covered by the non-union employee personnel bylaw rule. And the selectmen set the pay wage. So the biggest issue is, I think what you're gonna see is, I think they're taking a stance of, we gotta wait till some more numbers come in, see where we're at before we start doling out the cash. I mean, that's me just sitting on the outside looking in right now. Because when you see they're waiting on some numbers coming back from healthcare. They're waiting on numbers to come in from before they start allocating budgets and stuff. I think that's where they're at. They're waiting to see where we are with second quarter and how we did in the first. We know how we did in the first. Second quarter's coming next.
And they added, I mean, did they also look at the revenue side, because they added money coming in from additional taxes for
Correct.
rentals? and
Correct.
stuff like
So
that.
all
Look at
that, that's what I'm saying. So all that's coming into play. So right now, we're a little, and this is what I was saying to you, we're a little early to go running into the selectmen's meeting when they can't give us any answers yet. They're gonna
But
wait.
yes and no.
They don't-
Because, to be frank, now that we've generated the revenue that we have, we're not dependent upon the tax revenue. It doesn't matter
No.
what's happening with the rest of the town. So our strategy, I believe, our strategy should be that, absolutely, wait for all of those things. See what you can get out of the state. See what you can get out of the federal government. That's all gonna be gravy. But for the golf situation, we finally generated more, as much if not more, and according to the CFO, revenue than we spent. Therefore, how do we maintain that? How do we keep that revenue stream level or even increased? And this is how much money we need to invest in order to do that, regardless of what your tax revenues are.
I'm gonna
That
say,
should be, I believe that should be our approach.
Right.
And then we don't have to be dependent on anybody else. We don't have to wait on anybody else.
But-
And we just become a nice revenue source
The
for
part-
the town.
I agree with that. In theory, your thought process is exactly where we should be. Now I'm gonna give you the realization of this. We are a cost center town. We all are departments that work under one umbrella. The selectmen dole out the money and the townspeople, and they make their best suggestions. All we can do is wait to see what they're gonna dole out and then make a counter response to that. Because in the grand scheme of stuff, you can run in there and tell you wanna be treated like everyone else. And I'm gonna tell you this, because there's been plenty of departments that have, and you're gonna get told, we're all under the same one umbrella. And the reason I'm telling you that is, I've been in this town for a long time. And I've been.
But if it doesn't make sense,
So I'll give
if
you,
it doesn't make sense for us to be treated that way, just the fact that we always have is no excuse not to try to change it.
no,
I mean, it's.
you can, like I said, you can argue whatever facts you want. I think you can argue both sides of the coin.
Yeah.
The problem is that, I'll give you two bits. Plenty of people in the school.
I wish it was
The
that
school
easy,
system was,
Steve.
I do too, because the school system screams and yells.
Yeah.
The fire department, we need this. So understand, there's a lot of, and they sit up there and they try to say, okay, all this money that we gotta dole it out evenly, or as best we can, within the reason that they try to do it. They don't pick and choose. They, at least,
Sure they do, sure they do. If there is some insurance policy,
correct,
or a disability policy that the fire department has and the police department have, that's not discretionary. They pay that policy premium every year. Why?
right,
Because the downside risk is that if they self-insure
correct.
and they get claims, that's gonna cost them more
Correct.
than it would be to pay for the insurance.
So,
That's, what I'm saying is that there's a downside risk that if we don't invest in the golf course at the appropriate level, the revenue stream is gonna drop more than what we asked for. And therefore, it's a net loss. You're shooting, if you maintain that policy, you're shooting your own self in the foot. And that's unique and different with a revenue generating function.
that
And-
just happens to be a byproduct of a town that's set up as a cost center. That's what you don't understand. The main purpose of this town has not been to provide affordable golf and a gorgeous golf course to the residents. It was to provide a service to its members and its residents, and it happened to do this. And the hard thing is, now that you're here, it's hard for them to turn around and say, well, we're gonna treat them like the Taj Mahal and everyone else gets nothing. Now hold on, there are people in town who don't play golf, that see it as a burden more than it is a hint.
But if we position it such that all we're asking for is the appropriate level of investment, so we don't see a revenue drop, the people who say, I don't play golf, I don't care what the golf course does, do you care that the golf course
Correct.
adds money to the
And-
funds for the town beyond its cost, as opposed to cost the town more to maintain it? And that's all we're trying to do.
And let me tell you, that's exactly what we all sitting in this room are trying to achieve, and that's what we try to tell the powers that be. The problem is, we don't make those hard decisions in that room. And the hard one is, all we can do is do exactly what we're doing. Give them the information, tell them where we're at, and let them understand what's going to happen if they continue to do X, Y, and Z.
Okay, I think we have vented the topic
Yeah.
thoroughly. And this is my humble suggestion. If you would, put your comments in a bullet point format and send them to me. Paul, your points about additional funding that may be available to Harwich, I think is a huge point. We don't know what that is at this
Right.
point in time. Carol, in terms of timing, deferring to Sean, I think it's appropriate that we, time our response in a positive, proactive way. We don't want to get out over our skis
Right.
and alienate the kind of support we're going to need. We're going to need support from FinCom. We're going to need support from some of the other departments in town that have, similar requirements. So
Yeah, I think
if,
we should take our lead from Roman and from Sean.
oh, absolutely.
But I think we need to get
Yeah.
our piece together so
Yeah.
they can use it.
Yeah.
So we get that done a little more quickly so that they can then use it whenever they need to.
Carol, perhaps you could work with me, and when I get the accumulation from the input of the membership or the committee, I'll share that with you, and maybe we can just put a document together that everyone can review, so that all the points reflected are a good barometer of what the general sentiment is of the group. How does that sound?
Good,
Would you-
except I can't help because I hurt my back. That was a joke.
Yeah, it's heavy lifting
This-
over here.
The pen is mighty, or whatever. Well, thanks. If you're comfortable with that, that way I'll have another set of eyes on it. And
That's a good idea.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, Clem,
yeah, John.
are you comfortable with us corresponding to you now via email with some of these suggestions?
My common sense barometer says, yeah, I'd love to do that, but,
Okay, let's do it.
You
I
can
think
take
we
off.
need to think through how to communicate.
yeah,
So,
let's,
I would suggest this,
Yeah.
send everything to Clem, and then let Clem reach out to you
Yeah.
and have that discussion.
see, I can do it,
one-on-one.
I can do it one-on-one.
He just can't have it within.
And sunshine law wise,
Yeah, we
We're-
can't be collectively doing it.
we're in
Correct.
compliance. Otherwise, we open the door.
Send it to him, let Clem talk to you,
You
have a
know,
discussion.
you're-
What about everything that was just said today? I mean, we have it on video, it's available to the public, those are comments we made.
Right.
Oh, there's no doubt about that, but you get into another layer of intrigue if you start communicating via email. There've been a
Well, can't we communicate to you one-on-one?
oh, yeah, exactly. And that's,
Well, let's do that then.
yeah,
Correct.
that's our point of
Once
departure.
you get all the input, you can make the decision on who you want to make that available to.
Right.
Correct.
And I will keep everybody abreast of, what's going on. Fortunately, I've got some time.
The other alternative might be another little workshop.
Right.
If we have.
And Carol, the conundrum is getting clarification, because, Sean sat there last night, I sat there. I'm still not 1,000% sure as far as between Joe Powers and what the select board regard as meeting criteria.
So you can understand, you can have a work session with whoever in the room, as all of you can be in the room, as long as the meeting's posted, but no votes are taken, it's
Yeah,
just you guys
yeah.
getting together having a discussion.
I talked to James.
That's fine.
Yeah.
You can do this, take no votes, just have a work discussion, no
Yeah.
votes can be taken,
Yeah.
banter back and forth.
Yeah.
Then at your next meeting, what you came up with will then be brought up and said, we had a work session, we talked about X, Y, and Z, this is what came out of it, this is how, let's take a vote. Boom, you're fine.
When
But
I-
you cannot, in your work session, hold basically a vote unless it's posted and then you have a quorum.
Well,
Yeah.
I want it in writing because when I went to the town clerk regarding this meeting, that's why I was a little bit fearful, Steve. I didn't know whether you were in California or here. It suddenly, I said to Sean last night, I said, God, I never really gave this a lot of concern. Would we have a quorum? And, after last night, I said, oh my God. So let me just get that clarification. But John, to the point of communicating to me personally, we can do that. That's a point we can start at, and I will keep you in the loop as far as, a workshop, Carol, because I think that's a great idea. In the meantime, if we get comments, I've received comments, I can put a draft together so that you can peruse that, and it will support, Roman and Sean. That's the whole point.
Yep.
That's the whole point. Okay, folks, excellent discussion. Moving on to new business, the pending election of officers. I reached out to Paul White. Paul, if you could,
Sure.
I'd ask you to present a slate to the committee, and we can air that to the group.
Point of personal privilege, excellent, Sean, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
For your discussion. Yes, I think we all received the communication from the chair indicating anyone who was interested in serving as an officer should reach out to me. I double-checked all my communications. I did have a chance to speak with Clem and asked him if he was interested in continuing, and he is. And he in turn spoke with Martha, and Martha indicated a willingness to continue to serve. So having verified their enthusiasm and interest in continuing to serve, I would nominate Clem Smith to continue as chair and Martha Duffy to be vice chair.
And I need a second?
Second?
Okay, thank you. Second by Jack Conley. Any discussion? Is there anyone else we're in agreement? Okay, in lieu of no discussion, I call for a vote, and according to the, criteria set forth by the state, I have to solicit a vote to each individual in my remote participant group, I'll start with Carol Fuller. Carol, aye or nay? Aye, okay. John Crook,
Aye.
thank you. Steve Bellata,
Aye.
okay. Paul White,
Aye.
Martha Duffy.
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. People, thank you. I'd like to think we can deliver, Martha, at least continuity through the next year, hopefully without tornadoes, another variant.
I ain't saying anything.
And
Every time I open my mouth, something else happens.
I don't
so
want
I'm
to
gonna
jinx
leave
it.
at that.
I don't want to jinx it, but Hurricane Bob was the last hurrah. We don't need a hurricane.
No.
I'm walking out the door.
Okay, we're in
And given
total.
what happened in Kentucky over the weekend,
my-
I don't think we can count on anything.
Oh my
I'll
God,
just keep praying for good weather.
Paul, that was
Devastating.
just
God.
absolutely a shame. Under old business, people, I mentioned prior to the meeting, it was just a kind of sidebar conversation with Carol, because I had asked her if she was available to meet with John Libby. Our focus was going to be looking at the deck. And without going back into that probably overly lengthy communication that I sent to you, Sean Libby was very, very informative. And as far as the deck was concerned, and Sean can back this up as well, he felt that there was good integrity there. That if the next vendor, in terms of food services and/or anyone else, was interested in all-weather curtains and so on, that would be a very possible, viable thing to do. I suggested looking at the hand railings, which the last time I went up, were kind of in a 30-degree attitude, but maybe that's all fixed. His pushback was, by the way, speaking of railings, he said, we've got to get that handicap access fixed, which was bumped into by Ring Brothers.
Oh.
This was an issue I wasn't aware of, but that's imperative. That has to be done by this spring, you know.
Yes.
And
Otherwise, you're not in compliance.
well, and the irony is, because I talked to Ron Leitner personally, he thought Ring Brothers was doing it, and you know what I'm going to say, Ring Brothers thought we were doing it. So that's going to come to a focus.
What about Ring Brothers?
What's that?
Oh, he wanted to know
What
what
did you say
about.
about Ring Brothers?
Well, Ring Brothers service truck
A delivery.
was making a delivery, and they KO'd the handicap ramp.
Oh, okay.
And you know, so in any event, that was one thing. And just going away, I hope I didn't lose anybody when I mentioned synthetic planking. You know, the new Aztec composite, that's the way to go. I mean, it's pricey, but if you're going to do an
That'll
enhancement,
last.
Yeah.
That'll last forever.
yeah, that's and Sean knows every time you throw a coat of paint or preservative on that wooden stuff, forget it.
It's a matter of time.
It's shadowed in there. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah.
cover from the roof.
Where are we on the, is the restaurant, the food service bid out yet?
It's
I
It's-
can't, I don't know that one.
Steve, it's a work in progress. The town administrator took over that. He took ownership of. We're talking about food service contracts, folks. To the best of my knowledge, and you know how these things go, it bumped back to both Roman and John Rendon. By the way, send me your thoughts about the RFP. So Steve, I know that's a long answer, but I don't know where it is.
At the selectmen's meeting 2 weeks ago, I think he discussed this.
Yeah.
But he also said it doesn't need to go out as an RFP. I thought that, or I don't know whether that's completely accurate or not. It didn't need to have to be selected based on an RFP. They could select
They could, yes,
something.
they have that prerogative. But,
The Board of Selectmen?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But the good news is it gonna be said, Sean?
Something I don't know about.
The good news is that Mr. Leidner is interested in continuing. So
Wow.
I don't want to, over-exaggerate, the interest as such, because it's all business. But at least it's not a definitive, no, I'm not, interested. So I think that's a good thing. And, like all these things, and Sean's been around long enough to understand it, these things all tip into, for example, and this was in the discussion with Mr. Leidner, his insurance company, Steve, they've been on the phone, hey, what's going on? All those decisions, your liquor licensing and everything, it's all contingent on approval by the Board of Selectmen.
Correct.
To put this in place.
The liquor license expires 12/31, doesn't it?
Correct.
I believe it does.
Yeah.
And, you would think, because of prior history, that would all move on a fast track. No guarantee, unfortunately.
But-
I don't want to
Well,
be.
I listened to the town administrator, and I just feel as though he is coming up with reasons why he hasn't been able to achieve where we should be right now.
Yeah, I don't,
And to be frank, the issue I had, and I still have this concern,
right,
we need, if it's gonna go out to bid, which it should, if Ron wants to
Yeah.
bid on it, great,
Yeah.
if he's the winner, great. But it should go out to bid with a reasonable time frame for responses. Last time, it went out to bid for a week. And so they followed the rules legally,
yeah,
but it was a political sham. There is no way that was going to receive competitive bids.
yeah.
Yeah.
The people, the other food service people in the area do not peruse every newspaper every day to see if the town of Harwich is putting some opportunity out to bid.
Yeah.
The only one that responded was Ron,
Right.
because he was the only one that knew it was coming, and it only came for a week. That's wrong. It needs to get publicized, and it needs to be an open bid process, so it can be fair and competitive. If Ron is the winner, which he certainly has a major leg up, because he knows the environment, and overall people are very pleased, so be it. But let's not pretend that we're being fair and reasonable here in this bid process.
But the catch he's established this year, Steve, is that you can get Cranberry Valley, you can
Yeah.
get the Saquotucket
Saquotucket.
Harbor, or both.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can win both restaurants.
Yes, but what I'm saying is, if we only go out for bid for a week,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I
95% of the
understand.
competition to Ron don't
Right.
even know that it's out to bid.
Right.
And that's not fair. That's just
Yeah.
wrong.
I'll just,
Well, that is what you need to take up with the town administrator, really.
yeah. Well, I'm sure Roman's gonna be in
Hold on.
discussion with him.
It's wrong, but it's legal.
Yeah,
So let me clarify something. It's wrong, but it's legal. Legal states,
Yes.
7 days, 1 day in the newspaper, in your local paper.
Yes.
It only has to be in the paper for 1 day. We do it for 7. So if I tell you this, it's legal, but it's not right,
It's,
doesn't matter.
it's legal, but it also cost us half the rent.
I'm just,
Because Ron was in a totally non-competitive situation.
I
and
didn't say,
said, I need you to cut my rent in half.
Yeah.
We had no choice.
I mean-
And that's not fair to the taxpayers.
well, I'm saying to you, it's a state rules. Those are the rules that come out of the state. That's what we follow. So,
But
like
they
again,
put it in the Chronicle, and the Chronicle only comes out once a week.
Yeah,
so like, and like I said, the state, you post in 3 spots. We do it all the time, just like you do for your postings for your meetings.
John Crook, John.
Clem, when does the hot stove lease run out at Cranberry Valley?
It's already done.
Or has it already run out?
It's already run out.
It's
It
run
ran-
out.
It ran out the first week in November.
And so it begins on what, April 1st?
Yeah,
Yeah.
If the new lease, what we usually have out for leases is usually they have to be open no later than the first week in April, and they can close anytime after the first week in November.
Well, I guess my only comment would be, I hope they get on top of this, because every time we've had a lease come up,
It's been like,
it's the last 2 weeks prior to April 1st, and we're just scrambling to get
Yeah.
somebody to go in.
I agree.
Yeah,
It would be great if we could do this up front.
Right.
with a little bit of lead time.
right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I will stay in constant conversation with Roman. It is a challenge. Recently, I'll just give you an insight. I'm somewhat involved with the West End Yacht Club, and we petitioned for food service contracts. We contacted directly 22 major food service providers and vendors. We circulated an RFP for over 3 weeks. Zero response. And it'd be like me turning my kitchen over to you guys and saying, here it is. No surprises. There's an oven, refrigeration. Tell your wife about this. Sean. In any event, you know, we'll just have to stay on top of it. I want to leapfrog a bit just so I get these 2 key things in that discussion with Sean Libby. Our favorite topic, just kidding, but bathrooms, permanent bathroom facilities. You read the fine print there. In his cost analysis, and I mean, it would take actually a sit down to have him, you know, amplify with us, because he could supply the data. But he assured me, based on constructions at the beaches and at the various ball field locations and so on, his estimate ran roughly for a permanent structure in the neighborhood of $150,000. He said some of the costs might be mitigated with new technologies, et cetera, but you're dealing with the leach field, public health conundrum. I'll put those 2 kind of together, plus potable water being available and electric. There are some self-contained systems that are in the marketplace, but I'm confident that his number, you know, is within the realm of reality. So it's something to think about.
Would we need 2?
He was very adamant. He said that he not only thought about 2 structures, but this was kind of interesting, Carol. He thought about placement of a 3rd structure near the clubhouse. And this was his idea, because he said the inordinate traffic of people, okay, I'm going to the 10th hole. I'm going to hit the men's room or the ladies' room. They come into the clubhouse. They march in, all the debris, etc. And, you know, the wear and tear on those facilities, he thought might be mitigated by, you know, here we are humbly asking about 1. So we've got a point of departure, whether it's 1 or 3 or 2. At least it's on the table. And, you know, we can prioritize it as we go forward. That's my thought. And then lastly, within that conversation, I kind of brought it up just for whatever reason. Having been in there recently, his focus over the last 2 or 3 years, if you remember our conversations as a committee, this committee, whether you were here or not, had kind of looked at a no-brainer. Why don't we have gas as an alternative fuel resource at the clubhouse, or another system in place? So he was, prior to COVID, he said, God, he said, all I kept thinking about was getting gas over to you guys. He said, but I guess that's never going to happen. And I said, well, considering our excess electric, and that's how the conversation came up, I said, why don't we go state-of-the-art, heat pump, cell storage specific, with an alternative system? He said, my God, he said, that does make sense. So it's an ambitious project. Just to frame it in a kind of, in the context of reality, we are the only facility, doesn't it figure, in town that has an antiquated oil-fired heating and air conditioning system. It's so bad that he has to go off Cape to get service agreements to, preacher required, to get somebody to come into Cranberry Valley to service it. So it's a dinosaur, and I haven't seen the figures. I should have. I was just too busy this week, but I could have gotten them from Roman as far as, what the fuel costs are and so on. But based on this conversation, I'm very confident that if we looked at our capital plan, people, this is something that would make inordinate sense. And it was kind of a joint discussion, not just me, but, I mean, he's the expert. Sean, any comments to
No.
that effect? And the system he referenced, and I sent you a copy of this, it's called a variable refrigerant flow, or VRF
Yep.
system. And guys in the trade, I was thinking of you too, with your kinds of projects, corporate projects, when it came to those big mechanical infrastructure requirements, this seems to make sense to me. So I'm just presenting it to the committee. Again,
Do we have a cost estimate for the system?
what's that?
Do we have a cost estimate?
He's working on it. Basically, what's happening is Mitsubishi units.
Yeah.
Basically, is
Yeah.
what's gonna do it. You just, how many units you need,
Oh, the,
that's what a variable,
Right.
okay,
That's what-
and that's for the AC.
Right.
and heat.
Yeah.
And heat, you
And
can
heat.
do both at
You
the
can
same
do-
time.
you can
And
do both.
this brought up collaterally, remember, because I brought it up, I think, or someone on the committee did. This brought up the idea of a backup generator as well.
Correct.
And the technology's moving so quickly that, remember, Jack, I mean, basically, it wasn't affordable. I mean, it was so expensive. But now, those costs are coming down.
Well, for us, the costs are coming down too, and now that we were basically generating electricity, we're gonna use electricity to run those heat pumps and run those air conditioners. It's not gonna really cost us any more money, or actually less money, and save money from running the boilers, and we're cleaner.
Yeah.
So we're a cleaner golf course,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
because we're gonna get rid of the oil.
Yeah.
It just takes, one of those, in maintenance, it's a little bit tougher, because my office is no problem, but you have big areas, shop areas, where you have the big fans up top. That's a little tougher.
Yeah.
We may have to figure out something else in that aspect. Maybe we're burning waste oil instead of, like biofuels. Maybe the kitchen oil that comes out of there, we bring it down to the golf course and we burn it and we heat the shop with it. Maybe something like that in the future.
And speaking of our energy output and so on, if you remember in that little note that I sent out, I mentioned the all-electric on the maintenance side. And Sean has some great news to kind of share. I knew that it was a work in progress, but I didn't know precisely what proactive measures he had taken. But could you share where you are?
So,
On
when
that
we,
issue?
so 2 years ago, when we were supposed to do the equipment, we were starting to look at, the market was changing for golf course equipment. Most of the time we're using either gas propelled or diesel propelled equipment. Well, with the newer stuff coming out, they've made such big strides in electricity and hybrid machines, and then full electric mowers. We decided, I made a decision to start the process of going greener with the equipment. So when we leased this last equipment, we went to hybrid. So we have diesel engines with electric cutting units. So less hydraulics, less filters, better wear and tear, less oil changes. So we made that switch already. All our fairway units, all our greens mowers, all our tee mowers, apron mowers, rough mowers, all are what we call hybrids. So they basically are running diesel engines, but their output as far as to the units are all electric motors. So then that cuts down on it makes us greener. Because we're really we got a big battery in there, we're running the units with that, and then the engine itself is what propels you back and forth. Eventually, we'll go to 100%, but right now, we're getting, again, we're doing our best part to get to that point.
And do they provide the similar duration to cut?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, as far as 5 years, we'll get 5 years out of the equipment.
No, I mean, I don't know how long you
Oh,
cut during a day, 4
Yeah.
hours, 3 hours.
Because it's a hybrid and it's running on an engine, per se, like your car,
Yeah.
it charges the battery that's in there. So basically, it's like an alternator in your car charging your battery. Nothing different. It's just a bigger battery source. So when it's sending the power to those units, it's off of the engine. So then you're fine as long as you're running, you're no problems. It runs all 8, no problem. What we did cut down was hydraulic leaks. So remember, when you see that golf course and you see that streak down that fairway, let me tell you, it's nice now because most of the time you get the brakes is from the main engine to the unit. That's where you break the most, because those units are always swinging out, swinging up. They have, and then the pressure after a couple of years. Well, now I have no fluid running to those units, so we're gonna save in that aspect.
That's huge. And you've seen the damage that can be done. It doesn't happen all the time. But when it happens, it's always,
Yep,
Sean,
it-
in a very high, for whatever reason. It doesn't happen
Right?
right in the middle, where
Yep.
everyone sees it. And, and then it comes back, what's wrong with those guys?
I know,
Didn't they?
like we
How
didn't
could that
know.
guy not see that leak?
Right.
Et cetera.
Eventually, I don't know, I definitely won't be at Cranberry Valley, I'll probably be retired by then, but you're gonna have robots cutting. You need as
Yeah.
much help.
Yeah.
We'll have,
Sure, you're right.
we're at a point now where GPS units on spray rigs, we don't have to do anything other than drive the vehicle. It pretty much turns on, shuts off by itself. That's how deep it's getting detailed on the equipment, so. It's all good stuff,
Regarding the Harwich Conservation Trust, I've been in conversation with Mike Latch. Based on that little query that I sent out to you about affordable housing, et cetera, I'm waiting for him to get back to me. He had a lot going on. That contact with him was over 2 weeks ago, and I'm not throwing him under the bus. I know he's very busy.
Where is the land that they were talking about?
Right next to the gate, to the right.
To
as
the
you're
right of
going
the
out.
gate?
To the right of the gate.
To the
And how deep does it go towards because that's heading towards
Well, it's
the
like
back
two-
of the range,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's like 2.5 acres, but most of it is marsh, Steve.
yeah. I don't,
It's all wetlands back there.
And Martha, that underscores the fact that when we walked, remember, John, when we walked that property on Oak Street, but I've seen them do whatever they want to do in a way, Steve. I don't know how that's buildable. I really don't know how it's
Well, they're
buildable.
building one house.
Yeah.
That's all they're building.
I guess that's the key. But nonetheless, I still think it's vitally important. Your pond, irrigation pond, that side of Oak Street, that side of the entrance, I want that I want that umbrella
I
of
was
protection.
amazed that one meeting that land was brought up. The selectmen took 2 minutes
Yeah.
to transfer that land to the Conservation Trust, so it would be available.
I thought
1 minute.
the whole golf course area was under a trust from the guy that donated it to
Exactly,
the town.
Mr. Marsline and the other people that were involved in that.
No.
But it's sort of like the old Pine Oaks thing that I brought up the year before last in committee. Guess what? It suddenly came and went, right, Sean?
Yep.
Land that was, to your point, never supposed to be touched, gone.
So
So
under-
we don't,
So understand
I don't
this.
want to be, I don't want my name on that if, going down the road. I'm sorry.
Understand that when you designate certain properties, like they did with the golf course, the initial stance on it was that the golf course itself, which is now on 80 acres of turf and somewhere 185, including was originally 200, including Pine Oaks. But as long as the original golf course wasn't affected, that land cannot change. It has to stay forever the way it is. Open space, conservation.
Yeah.
The other pieces of property that are abut the golf course
It's up for grabs.
are up for grabs because they never were used to be a golf course. And that's where that stance comes in.
And that's
The
why-
good thing is, a lot of it's unbuildable. So.
And that's why
because
I
of-
think we can open the door to some walking trails, off-season, et cetera, and some other collateral uses, habitat for, I'd hate to see the box turtle in his territory violated, or
Well, hey,
vernal-
listen, before, what
vernal
you wish
pools?
for, and when you open the door to conservation, just remember, we're on the other side of that fence, doing things that isn't so much conservation, so it's got to be a fine line. And let me tell you, I was a trustee on the Harwich Conservation Trust for over 7 years, so I understand
Yeah.
the thought process. One of the biggest things that Cranberry Valley ever did was open the door to them to let them come in and find the 14 vernal pools that they found.
Yeah.
So understand, it's gonna be very hard to piece out kind of what they want, where they want it. Can they get one? Most likely. More than that, I don't think so. But again, you have,
Yeah.
conservation don't give up all too fast, so let me tell you that. They have a hard line. I mean, let me tell you, our cop barn, the day we went 1 foot over that 50-foot bound, we had to cease and desist and stop until she came out and saw where we were and we measured.
Yeah.
I knew we were fine, but
Okay,
What happened to the designation of recreational use?
because the golf course is under that, as long as the initial golf course, what it was, the land that was intended for, has not changed. That land is still, the other land is up for grabs, it's never been used in all those years. The selectmen have
Yeah.
power of that land.
Yeah.
As long as the original golf course doesn't, it's not going anywhere, they're gonna say, you got your golf course, that's not going anywhere. What do you need these extra pieces of property around? And it's hard to say, well, we want a future expansion. Well, you gotta come to us to get the expansion, so we're not giving you that property, so. It's kinda hard.
Yeah.
And so and it's a
I
different,
really like the idea of walking trails and nature trails
Yeah.
or something,
Yeah,
because
I
it would
mean-
keep it in its natural state.
Right, and it preserves the integrity of the golf course.
So-
And in terms of its aesthetics, you know, I mean, God, I saw on TV,
So-
it was,
so-
you know, one of the big name tournaments.
I'm gonna share something with you. My mother did housing for 25 years in this town. If you have a shiny object, and you're all looking at that object, and I'm over here doing this, and you don't know about it, so is there any other land that can be used in town for housing? Well, you spin it over here, and you say, wow, we only got 1 acre, but wow, there's 110 over here. Why aren't we doing anything over here? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Well,
where we have to get better at, it's not so much worrying about what's over here. What we have to do is go out and find out what's else out there that they can then go and take, and give them a bigger fish to want to fry, other than just that 1 little acre that they want to
But
use.
to that point, Sean, and based on what Martha said, did they not, in that same meeting, Martha, they approved or accepted 12 and a half acres of land
Right, I mean,
designated, and I said, what's wrong with the 12 acres
Well,
to put that house on or whatever?
I'm gonna give you a little, I'm gonna go back again for you. Understand this, and I don't know why I know this information, but every town's supposed to be at 10%. And we're supposed to be at federal funding based off of that 10%, making that 10%. Well, no town in the state of
Affordable housing.
Affordable housing. No town in Massachusetts has even come close to reaching 10%, but they still give out the money. So when you have 12 acres and you're that far behind, you're gonna, and where we should have done it in 1970, like sewers, and we should have done housing just at the same time. And we had a lot more land then and to do it. And we were gonna give them money to do it, and we chose not to. Here we are now later on, and the problem that we face is there's a lot less land to be done. So, 1 acre needs to be 12 here, 13 over there, 14 over there, and 15 over there, because we still, even with that, won't even come close to the 10%. So understand, for a while, until we get our butts, what's gonna happen is the first time one town gets to it. Because now the first town, and Orleans is pretty damn, excuse my language, pretty close. Orleans gets to it, now they're gonna say, well, wait a minute, we're here doing all this, how come no one else is doing it? Because when everyone's in the pool together and you're all swimming in the same direction and no one wants to clean it, it's all fine, hey, we're all here. All of a sudden now, someone cleans it and says, hey, how come the rest of them aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing? That's what's gonna be the case. That's why we're at, same with sewers. It's the same, that's why you hear the two things that you're hearing and you're gonna hear now for the next 5 to 10 years. It's gonna be sewers and housing. We have no housing for employees, no affordable housing for people just to stay here, and then sewers. We should have done sewers back in 1970 and we got no choice. We defecate in the water we drink. So somehow, some way, that's gotta change. And that law is not going away. Clean Water Act of 1991 is not going away. So,
Okay, moving to the last point under old business, you know, I included this because I think it's vitally important, and it supports Sean and his group in particular, because, you know, you hear the criticism from the peanut gallery in the background. Oh, what do you mean? Winter? They don't do anything up there. There's nothing going on.
I wish.
John, if you could give us an encapsulated kind of view of what your plan is, for this winter, based on our other initiatives like the tree removal, the stump grinding, et cetera. And some of those electrification projects, I think one thing that John Crook had mentioned, people we had discussed, the probability of the control gate at the entrance.
Yep, I'm still working on
And
that.
the moving, remember Carol, when we went out in the golf carts, the moving of the solar on number 10, the aeration fountain, I think I understood the electric was gonna be moved there, so.
I have a quote for that too. I'm waiting to figure out, again, the hard one with that one is that I have half the money. I got to figure out how I'm going to get the rest of the half. And the problem is, if I try to take it out of the budget I am now, there's going to be some things that I can't do. And going forward, I'd try to use some of the money that would be allocated to me for July 1st, but we don't know what that number is yet. So just give you an idea of what we do for the winter. So I have one guy that basically does tree work every day. Goes out, cuts down trees, trims up trees, cuts down, he goes with the mower and trims and mows it down like a gravely. That's all he does every day, pretty much, when he can go outside. When he can't go outside, the rest of the crew, I have 2 guys that are inside doing mechanic work. All the equipment gets torn down, resharpened, re-greased, ready for next season. Go through every piece of equipment we own. Also, too, every flag stick that comes in, every tee marker that comes in, every trash receptacle, all goes through, painted, cleaned up, ready for next season. Also, on top of that, the irrigation system, which we already blew out, we'll go through that in the computer that we have, make sure the stations are doing what they're supposed to do. We go through all those. That's for the assistant. The assistant superintendent's going out and putting down, we're closing the greens. So we're going to go out and we're going to do exactly what we're supposed to do, which is verti drain them, top dress them, spray them with snow mold. So that's just upon that. And then on top of that, guys have vacation time they got to use, and the town's stance is we're not carrying much over anymore, so this is the time to use it. So we tell them make sure they're using their time. So for predominantly that's what we're doing. Like right now there's a project that we're doing. I got to Rain, the gentleman, is to the right of the starter sheds right there.
Yeah.
That path where we keep the pull carts. We're actually tomorrow we're going to be basically doing like a lean-to. So we've already got the wood. We're going to build basically a roof over the top so they'll slide underneath. They stay out of the weather a little bit better. So we're building that as we speak. That will go up tomorrow. There's other projects on the golf course, like you said, about we've mapped it out. It's going to cost me about $8,900, but that's just for the hardware that I need. I still got to figure out how I'm going to get the power cord out to 10, out to 11. Now understand, when he was talking about Bouse House, they're going to want power and water, potable water. That's, again, when you put it out on the golf course, I don't have potable water on the golf course, and I don't have electricity. That's 110 per se, other than a couple of spots where we have the horns. So those are some of the hurdles that we face. Same thing with where we're at when we're looking to try to do other things out on the golf course. So we're limited in that aspect. Right now we have it running off the irrigation system that gives me a low voltage, but it's done enough to run a fountain. It's just enough basically to run a couple of diffusers in the ponds to give me the oxygen levels that I need.
And I kind of feel guilty as far as the group's concerned because it falls on me. I anticipated that Roman would have covered, if you remember back to our last meeting, kind of a cost analysis of our current capital project, because at the end of the rainbow is the major undertaking of Sean's reskinning of that building. And I was hoping that he could provide those financials for us, just to let us know where you are, because I had mentioned in the last meeting, Sean, I don't know whether it was, I can't remember if it was specifically in the minutes, but those cobbled,
Yeah, the cobblestone pavers.
well, no, the cobbled accessory bump outs on your building, at least one committee person's perspective, I want you to be able to have the best building possible. And if it means reconfiguring, you know what I mean? I'd like to see that accommodated. I wondered what you think.
Well, the hard thing that we face is the number that we got for skinning the building when they were there. We can't meet that number that they gave us a number on. What we thought we could do, we can't do. And what was told to us was On the building that we have, it was basically slab on grade. So we have a concrete slab,
Yeah.
and basically we erected a set basically over the top of that concrete. Well, everywhere where that metal building's touching the ground, it's rusted.
Yeah.
So because of that, what they suggested was to come in and do what we call a knee wall, of basically around the building, and then we go up on top of the knee wall and go from there up and over and down. That's what they suggest is what we should do. The hard one with that is it adds to the cost. And like I said, the cost that we had originally gotten, we were still probably 100,000 shy of where we should have been. Now, again, when we came up with the number and we did this, it was 3 years, 4 years before, and then all of a sudden, you never know what the market's gonna be, and it just happened to be at that point that we didn't.
Now, are you referencing Cardosi
Yes.
Construction?
Yes, they're the ones that were there, they're the ones that gave us a number. And he said, since I'm here, we figured we'd get a number, and it was still 75 to 100,000 more than we thought. So at that point, we said, oh, you know what, we'd rather make sure we do the rest of the project as right as we can, and then we'll see what we have left. And then at that point, we can then reassess how we want to attack it. If we want to go put the money back into the fund and then come back with a new project with the correct amount and then do it right the first time, or do we say, okay, let's add to that number, we need another 100,000, let's add to it and then try to do it that way. But first, we still have some loose ends that we need to tighten up, and that's what we're doing now. These are little projects that we still have to finish. I'm in the process of getting ready to seal that floor in the barn. And then there's two other ones. Gasoline tank has been moved, as you guys know.
Yeah.
We're making some adjustments to the gasoline because Roman would no longer need it. So we're gonna move it into more of a maintenance, mostly diesel, a little bit of gas. And then the washdown pad out on the easement. We talked about that. And we're gonna start doing some stuff like that, a little bit here and there, maybe add a building, add this, add that, and then get to the point where we just maybe purchase the unit and throw it in.
And we're still engaged with, because I was thinking of
Car
Paul, the idea of surveillance cameras.
Oh, yes, no.
And/or,
We've already, that was one of the things I actually had a conversation with Roman. We're gonna entertain a company to come in and basically do all three buildings. Maintenance, the car barn, and the pro shop.
so in other words, you'll have a Wi-Fi network.
Correct. We wanna make it so then I can pick up my phone when the alarm goes off at the golf course and I can just go, oh, yep, I see, yep, I gotta fly.
Does that include lights too, Sean?
Yes. Yep. You see, if you go up there now, it's pretty, actually, in the morning, and when we get there, it's actually pretty lit up. That car barn actually lights that parking lot up pretty good. And then with the path lighting that we did, because we originally thought we were gonna put some lighting down in the parking, along in the parking. We don't feel that we need to. I mean, our main goal, and we're not open in the middle of the night, so. The good thing is the restaurant, he has quality light to get to a car, no problem whatsoever. So I don't think more off the building, we'll probably do some more off the back of the pro shop, some more lighting off the back of there, around the corner, update that, same with maintenance. And then I think once we do the gate, it kinda, once we set that timing up, it's gonna kinda set a whole different tone. It's gonna open in the same time every day, it's gonna close the same time every day, so.
So what's your timetable on the gate?
I'm working on that now. Again,
Oh,
the logistic is trying to get power to it.
Yeah.
So that's where hiring someone to come in to dig the trench. Now, understand, let's say I have a recovery well. When you go down the road, you know where that sign is that says, thank you for coming?
Yeah.
There's a little indent right there. That's my recovery well. That's what pumps in. We can pull power out of that building. So do I put the gate right there? Or do I try to go all the way down to the other gate and try to do it there? The issue is when I go all the way down to the other gate is you got electrical, and now the only spot where we don't have it in conduit is from that pit right behind that sign straight over to there. So again, things come into play. Eversource comes in. So I've suggested that two ways. Either I'm going to price it out both ways. I think we can dig the trench. We can put in the conduit. It's a secondary line. I hire an electrician to do the connection. We get the gate, and I said to Roman, I thought we should just do the gate right there near the sign. It makes it simple, so it's an easier run. And then just have a big long fence come in and a big long fence come out. And the number on the side.
Are we in compliance with the fire requirements for
Yep.
being able to get a fire truck into the actual
Yes.
driveway?
Yep, no issues there. It's a double lane. It's over 35 feet wide. That truck comes up on a regular basis. You see the lane that we painted up there? We have no issues there whatsoever. They have total access to it. They've been, what I usually do every year is we call them up and say, come over, take a look. Tell me if there's anything you need us to change.
But if you put a gate in, will they have access to the gate?
Yeah, they have access now to the gate. When we do close, like for Christmas, I come down and I close the gate. There's a key lock on the side. They have the key to that to get in. So, and they'll have, at that point, we'll just give them the code and they'll have the code, punch the code, go in.
It was nice to have advantage of having the superintendent of the green here. Does anybody have any other further questions? Because we've got them captured here. This is
A quick
unusual.
comment, I was walking around after I took a look at the carts today, and I noticed that you've replaced the perimeter fencing, like on the, by the tee box on 4, and I'm sure you've done it elsewhere, so.
Yep.
That's stuff that gets done in the winter too.
Correct. Well, we do it as we can, you know what I mean? The hardest thing is in season, a lot of the times, we have so much going on so fast that we don't have time because the grass is growing so quick. So this is the off season when we can get to stuff like that.
Oh, I just thought of another thing, folks, and this is really important. If you remember in our last meeting, Roman brought this up. According to the best information I have, Sean, our request for bunker refurbishment is still sitting on the desk of the Assistant Town Administrator.
I'm not going to give her all the blame. There is a little
No,
bit
I'm
of
not blaming.
No, but there is. It goes both ways. When we lost our procurement officer,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
and when he walked out the door, it's been pushed back to department heads again. The issue that we face when you do procurement is I can write the specs. The contract is, I'm not a contract guy, I'm not a lawyer. So then I have to deal with getting that information, sending it off to the lawyer to then look at to make sure that everything for the bid is good to go. Because again, like I said, it needs to be legal, don't need to be right, it just needs to be legal, so.
But the point in my bringing it up is the fact that theoretically should be part of the winter plan this year.
Well, let me put it this way, I have more than one thing on my plan for bid, and right now I'm working on the nets. You noticed that the driving range nets were ripped.
Right.
So I'm in the process, I'm waiting for a third bid for the nets. If everything works out, we should be able to go and get that fixed so that at least we can start in the spring. The other one is the driving range tee. We're gonna go to sod, but when we rip the nets, I got a quote for 17 and I got a quote for 37. So I'm hoping that the next one comes somewhere, so you don't know. So, and the driving range tee is gonna cost us, if I resod it, it's about $35,000. So, and we have some money to play with, and what I mean by that is in the capital within the budget. So, we know we're gonna get the driving range tee done, and then we're gonna see where we're at from there and see if we can get the tee done, at least for the spring. And then we'll go from there on
I think the
towards
committee
bunkers.
had also asked for clarification on the insurancing.
So understand this, we have, the problem that you have for insurance, like in this situation, it's 15 years old. It was done in 2007. So when you sit here and you say, the net didn't hold together, it's kind of hard to say when it lasted 15 years. So it's kind of hard to say insurance when you'd say, okay, what's the lifetime expectancy of that net? So in that aspect, and the town's rider on that would be probably and if let's say $17,000, I bet you any money it's probably somewhere around your portion you're going to have to pay is going to probably cost you still at least 50. So it falls underneath that number. So in our eyes, we're doing it. So that's kind of where we're at with the driving range, with the nets, and then bunkers. I'm working on that procurement as we speak also to try to get that contract. I'd like to try to do it this spring. That's what my goal is. If for some reason we hit a hiccup or something happens, I guarantee you, I will have everything done so that come next fall, that's the first thing that we're doing.
Okay.
Do we have any, or you mentioned that you're still doing a number of miscellaneous things for the
Pipeline.
cop bond project. Are we gonna get a final accounting?
Oh yeah, me and Roman actually sat down and we're working on trying to finalize some numbers so that we have we know what we spent. We want to make sure that what we have left to spend, that we get numbers so that we can say, okay, it's going to cost X amount of dollars for that, X amount of dollars for that. Because the numbers that we had gotten before, there's no way they're still viable now.
And there's no chance that the amount of money that's still available would allow you to do anything for the maintenance facility?
Not the way that it should be done and done right. And that's why and we knew that from before when we got the original number, that our number was more like 150 and their number came in more like 250. So we knew at that point, we were like, okay, well, let's leave that on the far end, see what we end up with at the end of all these other projects. And then, like I said, do we take that, let's say it's 125 left, take that 125 and add another 125 and say, okay, let's go do that building. You know what I mean? That's kind of where we're at. So our goal was, let's get all these other things tightened up because we know we can afford it. And then let's see what's left for the building. If we need to reassess the building. I mean, it's made it 40 years now already. I mean, it leaks a little bit, but I mean, in the grand scheme of stuff, it's got to, we have no choice. So,
Well, that's why we have an infrastructure fund.
correct.
And the beauty of that is that we'll be able to fund it, you know?
Yep. You know, I've said this about Cranberry Valley is it takes a while to do whatever we do, but when we do it right. And we're not, and the nicest thing is a lot of people want to copy what we do. So obviously we must be doing something right. You know, if you do it wrong and no one wants to do it, then you're like, okay, well, that was just a waste of money. So.
Okay, any other comments, people? I guess Merry Christmas is in order.
Sweet.
And,
Health and happiness in the new year.
and happiness
Thanks,
in the new year.
Well,
Very well.
Are we,
Easier
are we just
easier said
saying
than done.
goodbye
Yeah.
to Sean, or are we continuing our meeting?
We,
we're done.
yeah, we can say goodbye to Sean and.
Thank you all.
Bye, Sean.
Bye, guys. Good seeing you guys.
Okay.
Bye,
Merry-
Sean.
Thanks,
Merry
Sean.
Christmas.
Merry
Sean, thank you.
Take care.
Thanks again.
Oh, no problem.
You know, if there's no further business, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn, but Carol, is there anything?
Yeah, I just had a couple of comments. You did a presentation to the Board of Selectmen. And I was looking at our long-range
Yes.
plans. And I am, for the life of me, although I did hear the selectmen question it, a nursery/cutting complex designed for super senior access after hours.
Right.
Now, you gave it, I never heard of that as
What
one of
is
our
it?
long-range plans.
These will be super seniors. but-
Okay,
I think that's us.
the, Carol, as a matter of
I'll
fact,
meet you there.
I invited the entire select board to come to Scotland to see. And
How about the golf committee?
How about the
and the golf
golf
committee, we can go too. But here's the point, we had talked in very general terms about a putting complex that mimics, yeah, okay. So
In general terms.
I did it,
How did it,
yeah.
how did it become one of our long-range plans?
Well, the nursery aspect was generally, and I had a question from the new select person about that. She said, are we going to be growing trees? And I mean, guilty as charged. I'm interpolating, but the nursery I'm obviously alluding to is the fact that when you have that kind of green turf resource, if you had a catastrophic event, whether it was chemical related or insect related, et cetera,
Hydraulic leak.
and you had to replace, 15,000 square feet of turf, that putting complex would be your /nursery as well. Because you can reseed that, you can returf that. That's why.
Yes, so
Yeah.
my point is not exactly what it is, it's just that I don't believe we, as a committee, discussed this to do one of our long-range plans. And I think it should have been, there are a couple of things on here that I don't remember discussing, not at least in my tenure, and perhaps I'm wrong,
Yeah.
we all had agreed upon it at another time.
Well, Carol, prior to, it was part of the conversation about a junior course, and the intent was to balance the junior course, which is focused on junior golfers, and introducing them to the game, and also a kind of caveat to, and not specific to seniors, but the way that St. Andrews Himalaya complex works, and it's, if you look nationwide across the board, these, I put it in quotes, putting complexes have become extremely popular. At Pinehurst, they've done one. There are several in the Midwestern states. There are a couple out in California. More progressive communities have gone that route. So, at least it was my feeling, maybe I overextended, but John, I guess I defer to you. I was under the understanding that we had at least broached the subject.
I don't remember anything like that.
I remember in
I
general
remember
talking
the
about
junior thing,
a
but-
putting complex, but,
Yeah.
but not the nursery part, and I think that's
Not
the
for
Carol's
super
point.
seniors.
And the super seniors, that, I mean,
Yeah.
if you
Well,
were
it's-
presenting to the Board of Selectmen a report from the committee on its long-range goals,
That's
nothing
not-
should have been on there, other than things that were discussed across the entire committee.
Well, as I said, guilty as charged. I was under the assumption that, we had broached that subject, and
I remember talking about it because both Martha and I played at a course called Stream Song in Florida, which had one of those.
you've been to Stream Song.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, we both have been, so,
We got it free
it was
because
okay. I mean,
it
it's
was in
huge,
such
and it,
bad
Yeah.
shape.
it reminded
They
me a
gave
little
it to us
bit more
free.
of miniature golf. I mean, it was obviously a beautiful place, but nobody was really using it, and it might be a good idea. But my only point is that I don't remember our committee concluding that it was a long-range plan.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
Merry Christmas, everybody.
A motion to adjourn?
Motion to-
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second?
Okay, second, Steve Bellotta. Thank you, folks.
Have a nice
Stay
Christmas
healthy,
in Florida.
wealthy, and wise.
Stay well, stay healthy, everyone.
You're not going
Yes.
down?
Merry Christmas, everyone,
You too, Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Have a great
See
New
you, John.
Year's.
and happy holidays, right?
I gotta hit that stop button. Would you, Martha, or Paul, thank you.
Stop record.
Yes,
Hit it.
perfect.